Hello, I'll be presenting concepts of Ludology and Psychology through the game Hyperlight Drifter. Hyperlight Drifter is a game developed by a small indie game studio, Heart Machine. The game is a two-dimensional, top-down slash-dash action RPG with a beautiful color palette and stunning imagery. The player takes control of the Drifter and must use their abilities to traverse the land, fight waves of diverse enemies, and ultimately defeat a boss in order to clear each of 4 zones. Throughout the natural progression of the game, players will acquire items, weapons, and new abilities to assist them, and increase the pace of the game's combat. Gameplay consists of basic WASD and cursor aim movement. Proceeding through the game requires the player to slash enemies' obstacles, dash to avoid and bridge gaps, and shoot to attack from range and activate switches. Familiarizing yourself with the combat controls makes the game incredibly fluid and reflexive. Not long after starting your journey, you start gaining muscle memory for combos and dodging. Hyperlight Drifter is initially a fairly challenging game, requiring players to use their wits and reflexes to overcome the many obstacles and enemies they will encounter. There is a definitive skill flaw that must be met for most progress to be made in the game, but there are no lives and infinite respawns at current screen checkpoints. There are many opportunities along the way to obtain new weapons, abilities, and gear upgrades that improve your capabilities. Players begin the game unaware of their location or requirements, but conclude they must follow the logical path of the land to proceed. There are no initial hints or clues given about how to play, so some light exploration and testing reveals a simple set of controls. The tutorial continues with the player delving underground, finding and learning how to use health pickups, how to dash, fighting their first enemy, acquiring the pistol, and learning how to regain ammunition. Ultimately, the player is taught how to look for hidden passages in walls and cracks, as they may be the correct path to proceed, or simply hold items or collectibles. Throughout the tutorial, the player receives minor hints for controls and environmental cues, but afterwards is left to find out the rest for themselves. After the tutorial, players shortly arrive at an unknown town that plays the role of the hub for each of the game's 4 zones. The Crystal Forest to the west, mountains to the north, lakes in the east, and barren hills to the south. The goal is to traverse these zones, defeating enemies and learning what attacks they typically use in the area. Natural progression through this zone takes you through underground dungeons that you must clear to eventually unlock the path to the zone's boss. Halfway through each zone is a waypoint, which will act as a destination for saving, fast travel, and health restoration. Players must defeat the three bosses of North, East, and West in order to progress into the Southern Zone. Southern Zone is different compared to the others, as there is a multitude of mini-bosses that you must defeat along the way toward eventually locating the final boss of the game. Ivan Pavlov famously conducted experiments on canines to show that they could be conditioned to positively respond to certain stimuli. More specifically, dogs were shown a bowl of food which could cause them to salivate. Then he would repeat the test, but introduce an audible stimulus. In this case, he would ring a bell, and the dog would be conditioned to think that the sound of a bell indicated food. The dogs would then salivate at the ringing, even without food present. This is known as Pavlovian conditioning. Throughout Hyperlight Drifter, you will encounter many video game staples. Health pickups, in this case a white and green crate with a cross in the front, are a good example of one of these staples. We are conditioned to recognize this as an item that restores health. Hyperlight Drifter is rife with hidden locations, and finding them is oftentimes challenging, as it should be. There are, however, usually signs of access or interaction that players may spot when near a hidden area, such as a ledge with a scuff mark, or a symbol on a wall. Whatever it may be, we tend to associate these cues with hidden locations, or paths to explore, similar to how an alarm or flashing screen might imply you have low HP. Another psychological effect present in Hyperlight Drifter is what makes most of us complete tasks in any game, the rewards. Hyperlight Drifter incentivizes players, learning enemy attack patterns and drifter combos, by making combat flow much smoother and faster than the beginning of the game. Entering a new zone means new enemies to fight, usually with an attack pattern or method of fighting that hasn't been encountered yet. These attacks are usually indicative of how the zone's boss might fight, and what the player should be wary of. Timing your strikes and dodging can make you near invincible, at least with some practice, of which there will be plenty. Outside of combat, the player spends the remainder of their time traversing hazardous dungeons, maze-like forests, and many more locations. All throughout the game, the player will obtain gear bits, a currency that is required to unlock weapon, health, and character upgrades. Many of these are acquired through normal play, but the rest are located in hidden areas I've talked so much about. Rewarding exploration incentivizes curiosity and perception. In conclusion, Hyperlight Drifter is a game where players are placed in a world in which they must learn to overcome enemies and obstacles using the tools they are provided, or learn along the way. Whether or not the player choose to take certain paths, upgrades, or weapons, they must still defeat each boss to complete the game. The game is replayable many times, at least to a point, with its many upgrade paths and locations to explore or speed through, even more so when you include New Game Plus and the addition of cooperative play. Beautiful flowing animations, stunning colors, and imagery with an incredible soundtrack come together to provide players with a heart-pounding, challenging, and rewarding game that I can't help but call one of my favorites.